What is happening? What? Yes! This is sick! I love this so much. All right. I think one of the most important things for every producer is getting your drums as thick and as fat and as big and as punchy and as aggressive as possible. For every mix that I start, the drums are always the biggest, most important part for me to be able to build the rest of my mix around. So I'm gonna take you through some of the steps that I took on my most recent album to be able to bring my drums just to a separate level from what they were before I did any kind of processing on the drum bus. So before we jump into how I go about processing my drums on the drum bus, I'm gonna show you my drum mix without any of this processing. As you can hear, without any of the drum bus processing, the drum mix is okay. But I felt like when I got to the final stages of mixing my album, I felt like the drums were lacking a little bit of life. So I just started experimenting with some of the plugins that I have. The first plugin that I looked into was actually the Arouser by Empirical Labs. I think I've said it before, but Empirical Labs just makes some of the best plugins on the market when it comes to emulating the classic distressor. So I set the input gain at 3 dB. The attack is at 20.5 milliseconds just to ensure that the main transients of the snare and the kick come through. I have the release fairly fast. I have the detection high pass at about 55 Hz. This just ensures that it doesn't lock down on the kick too much. And then I have the mix at about 50%. I just found that this way is really great with drums. So I'm going to show you before and after. That's so sick. The next plugin that I pull up is the BSS DPR 402. For me, I've been using this for a couple years. It's something I've been using with my drums for a while. I've got it set at 20%. The ratio is a 4:1. I've got it at a semi-fast attack, a 100 millisecond release. I just find this really allows for the drums to be able to reach another level of aggression. One plugin that I really like is the SPL Transient Designer. I use this plugin primarily just to bring a little bit more attack. I never really do anything with sustain on my drum bus, making sure that those transients are punchy and make sure that the snare really cracks within the mix. The next step that I'm going to take is a really cool trick that I just kind of stumbled upon when I was going through my plugins and different styles of mixing over the past couple years. It's a plugin that you'll see me use a lot, and it's the FabFilter Pro NB. And the way that I use this is just to really control that low end when it comes to the kick. I have each of these side chained to the kick, so it just ensures every time the kick hits, this is going to dip about 2 dB. It really makes sure that the low end is just going to stay locked in place. So for each of these, I boost them about 2 dB, and then I compress them back down about 2 dB. It just ensures that low end is going to stay locked in place. And I find that this also really cleans up the low end as a whole when I do this. It really makes sure that the bass drum is going to play well with the bass guitar. The final stage of processing that I do is actually an instance of saturation with the PSP Vintage Warmer 2. This is something that I saw Alan Meyerson, who is Hans Zimmer's mix engineer, use on his drums. I thought it'd be really cool to instill this into the drum mix. I found that it was a really great way of initiating a little bit more low end without it getting out of control. So before I did any of this processing, it sounded like this. And the final mix came out like this. So before we jump into any oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Oh, I'm ridiculous. Oh gosh, what is my problem? So, okay. So before this is, all right, okay, gotta take this seriously. I've got a lot of work to do today.